Okay. Hello there, everyone. Welcome back. We have got that's interesting. Oh, it's in saved messages. All right, I was just trying to find my my notes before we get started. Yeah, we actually have a very short week this week. Short to the point where I think this might be the shortest one ever. I'd have to double check, and I don't really care that much, so I'm not going to. But yeah, we only have 9 albums, and realistically only 8 that I care about. We're going to talk about a 9th album, which is good, but kind of bad, and also just realistically, I think more indicative of what is not a new problem in the music scene, but which is one that maybe partly explains why there is such a lack of albums this week. So just straight up here, we are going to be opening up with electronic music. We have 2 there. Then we have 4 in rock and metal. And then we have 2/3 in pop and indie. But let me go ahead and get everything set up here. So I want to close a few things. But yeah, now I don't want to make it sound like the stuff here is like just whatever I cobbled together. The things that are here are actually, you know, interesting in their own regard. And some stuff is actually pretty good. Like, really enjoyable. But, yeah. Let's just get into it. Enough dawdling, right? Okay. So, we're going to open with electronic music. And the first release that we're going to talk about is Mallsoft Volume 1 by the group, or by the artist whitechemicals, I should say. So this is, every few weeks we get one of those more unusual releases, and this is one of them. This is not really avant-garde or anything like this. It is vaporwave, and vaporwave is like a retro kind of sound, but it's a little bit different. So basically, if I had to describe this, which is what I'm going to do, this is the audio equivalent of a dusty VHS tape of that you just discovered in like a garage sale or something, and on the VHS tape is video when somebody's filming their friends on the weekend in a mall sometime way back in like 1988 or even earlier, right? It's spacious, it's fuzzy, it's loaded with nostalgia that's not exactly your own, but it's also sterile in a way that large-scale consumer spaces tend to be. So I think you'll get the vibe with the album artwork is visually spot on.
Please proceed to gate number 3.
So, pretty unassuming, but it's also music that I feel like a lot of the time now would get described as backrooms style music or music for liminal spaces. Just a bit. I messed with the settings before and kind of lost it, but hopefully that's a little bit better. So it feels like the type of music that you would,
Do you mind if I smoke?
again, hear in
It won't affect the test.
a large shopping center. Muzak, that sort of sterile, kind of soulless, emotionless, smooth jazz type of music, but all of these layers upon layers of effects. I don't even know exactly what they are. So yeah, if you're not familiar with vaporwave, this is vaporwave. Again, it's that kind of retro sound, but ambiance, a remembered ambiance of a time that realistically probably the artist wasn't even alive for. So yeah, anyway, that is the EP, Mallsoft Volume 1. The artist is whitechemicals. Very short, 12 minutes long. It's kind of just a fun one to throw on. It really doesn't demand your attention, but it does have that, again, otherworldly sort of atmosphere to it. Like I said, the kind of the soundtrack or the vibe of a long forgotten VHS tape that somebody recorded on ages and ages ago. But all right, moving on. Electronic, it was a weird week too because we had this one here, this Vaporwave EP. And then the other release is it's actually a remix album from an album I talked about earlier in the year. So the artist is DRIADA, and the album that she put out in April or May, Iное. What we have here is just a remix album from that. And realistically, I'm all for it. So when there's an interesting indie electro pop album like Iное was, it's always kind of a treasure trove of musical ideas for open-minded producers and DJs who can pull aspects from the original tracks that were either overlooked by the majority of people and bring those musical ideas front and center, or they take something that was very obvious and front and center in the song, and then they warp it into something from the other side of the looking glass. That type of remix mania was super, super common in the 2000s. It was the main form of sustenance for music blogs of that era. Anyone maybe remembers the website The Hype Machine. It still exists, but that was... I feel like in the 2000s, the mid to late 2000s, that was so much of the online music scene were remixes of pop and indie songs. And I honestly kind of miss it. Like I said, the Hype Machine still exists. I rediscovered it a few years back. And while it does not have the same energy as it did 20 years ago, obviously so, music has changed. There was a period a few years ago where I was like really going to it and going through the remixes, probably during COVID. It was like nice nostalgia. Anyway, this album has that same energy. And I'm kind of hoping that this practice of, like I said, some sort of indie artist or indie pop artist or indie electro artist, that practice of them releasing an album and then shortly later, or shortly in the coming months or later that year, of a remix album then coming out of those songs, I do hope that practice is like rediscovered in the next 5 to 10 years. It feels like it probably will be. Judging by how musical cycles are going currently. And if you haven't listened to the original version of Iное, I would recommend going and checking that out. But yeah, there's kind of a little bit of everything here. It's either catchy, it's either hypnotic, it's energetic. It's, I don't know, it's just fun. It feels like the music blogosphere from the 2000s. Like I said, I'm all for that. Like, this feels like something I would have been blasting a little less than 20 years ago. But it's not all this same energy. but just so we can get an idea, so we can see that there are other sounds happening here. As is always the case with remix albums like this too, and I already mentioned this, it's always good to listen to the original album or re-listen to it, because it always gives you another appreciation too of how these tracks are being reworked. Not that you need to, these tracks you can enjoy without that sort of knowledge, but it gives the tracks perhaps a greater depth that they wouldn't otherwise have. They're not all the sort of club energy, right? This one's definitely more airy, ethereal, whatever you want to describe. It's lighter, but still has the spacey, you know, remix atmosphere. Fine. And it's always the case with remix albums, you don't really have to look at them as a complete artistic statement, right? Going into a remix album like this, I'm not really too worried about, like, well, is it cohesive or anything like that? There were definitely tracks I wasn't as keen on, but overall, listening to this album, I had a fun time with it, and I think, and that's kind of how it is a lot of times with, like, electronic music in general. Not to say that you can't have electronic albums that have a strong, cohesive idea. Completely, that's not the case. There are plenty of them like that, but they don't always have to be like that. This is it is labeled literally just the exact same as the original album, Iное. The artist is DRIADA. This is the Iное. If you actually go to her page on Spotify, I put the link there, but if you actually go to the albums, right, there's the original album. If you are interested in checking out the original versions of those tracks, like I said, I talked about that back in April, and I actually really enjoyed this album back in April too. And yeah, the remix album is also a lot of fun, and it's just kind of something, like I said, you don't really have to worry, you don't have to focus on it as like an artistic statement. You can turn it on, you can skip from track to track, it doesn't matter. It's a bunch of remixes, they're all good in their own regard, and there's probably going to be something there that you're going to find enjoyable. So that's all I got for electronic music this week. A little bit of vaporwave and a remix album, which gives you an idea of what I was digging into here at the start of the month. Now with rock and metal, it is a little bit better, so let's click over to that. We are going to start with, it's heavy, okay? This is probably the heaviest that we're going to have today, probably. So this is the album Black Cult, Cult with a V, so you know they're serious, and the group is Astra. This is just straight up, absolutely brutal, blackened deathcore. And this is a debut album from a group all the way out of Vladivostok in the far, far Russian East. So I'm just going to play a little bit. You're going to figure out the sound very soon. It's, you know, it's not a secret. You already know what we're getting. Still though, let's be real. For a debut, production quality is really good. They don't have really high high-end headphones on, but it sounds fine in all the headphones I've listened to this on. Really tight vocals. You might not be a fan of the deathcore vocals, but these guys do it well, and they're doing the atmosphere on the tracks too, which, you know, isn't necessary, but it kind of goes into the imagery that they're trying to build here, perhaps, with the black cult. Oh, and bonus points because the album artwork looks like it's actual artwork and not AI. I think that's enough. Realistically, if you like deathcore, you don't really need to hear a lot of it. This is good deathcore. It's a very good debut. And honestly, yeah, I'll be excited to hear more from these guys in the future. Realistically, deathcore is not a huge subgenre at this point in time in the metal community. I feel like it is getting bigger. Yeah, it definitely is getting bigger. But at the same time, this year, this is the third, maybe the fourth deathcore release that we've had, and it feels like it's been about one per quarter. So I don't know. I'm satisfied. I enjoyed it. It was a good one. But we're gonna move on from the deathcore thing. We're gonna get into something a little bit more. I don't even know what it's about. It's about as hard to describe as the album artwork here, which I think is a snail, but I don't really know. The name of the group here is Gnot. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it. Gnot. And the album is Вечность, Eternity in English. So I know a lot of times I talk about metal and metal subgenres, and if you're not into metal and you don't follow metal, a lot of it doesn't make sense. So if I use terms like post-black metal and black gaze, I realize that I'm probably losing most people. It just kind of goes right over your head. But that is the sound of this album. The black in both of those subgenres obviously refers to black metal, and that is there in the intensity of the guitars and the vocals. That is absolutely here in spades. However, the post in that post-black metal is a reference to the mood and the building that is more typically found in post-rock or post-metal, where it swells and shifts and changes and typically crescendos and then falls away. It's much more orchestral in some senses, whereas the black gaze is connected to the idea of black metal guitar riffing being used to create a sound similar to the wall of noise from shoegaze music, right? And yes, so we have these two different sounds here, which kind of feel like they should be at odds with one another, but that's not the case on this album. This album is very light and beautiful, almost transcendent in some situations, but then there are passages that are just pure speed and rage. But I would say, by and large, it is more of the light and beautiful end of things. I'm going to go into the third track here. I think that's a kind of a... I have in my notes too, if you are a fan of Alcest, Deaf Heaven, Alhava from here in Russia, or Celeste, the French group, even maybe Harikiri for the Sky, any of those groups would be a good, if you are a fan of those, you would enjoy this one as well. All right, we have this, again, like this kind of instrumental, very light, gentle opening. So here we are in the post-black metal kind of area, or post-metal, if you will. But we're going to jump ahead. Jump ahead more. shifted back into that lighter, more prettier sounding section, right? So this is where that post black metal comes in. It's very much black metal, but we have these conflicting sounds in some senses, especially with the vocals and the guitar that's happening. But yeah, right? If it wasn't for the vocals and those kind of really intense passages where it is black metal, this would just be kind of post-rock in a lot of ways. And there are tracks that are basically without the black metal. These last two, Inie and Вечность, especially the title track, the final track, very, very light. Most of the more intense elements have been stripped away, so while the black metal vocals and the black metal drumming and riffing are going to be there regardless throughout this album, I think this is kind of, I don't want to say it's an introduction to black metal because it's not, but it's an album that even if you're not a fan of black metal, and I've said this I don't know how many times this year, I really like this track. But like this might appeal to you still, even if you're not a black metal fan. I mean, again, the vocals are going to be a big no for a lot of people, but if you can make it through that, there's a lot of stuff here, musically, that's like really good. This is another one of those instances too where I would hope, or maybe recommend to the guys in Gnot, or the folks in Gnot, I don't know the actual band makeup, that maybe they release an instrumental version of the album, because I feel like this album would appeal to a lot of people if they were to remove the vocals. No offense to the vocalist, I don't have a problem with it, a lot of people don't, but yeah, the final track, if it's going to allow me to jump, has clean vocals on it, right? And for real, I do like the album artwork. Like, it's kind of clear what it is, but it's also confusing. So it obviously has the black metal stuff too. Like, let's not kid ourselves. But it's very, very limited. So yeah, that is post-black metal, black gaze. It's something. It's its own thing. The album is Вечность, and the artist is Gnot, or pronounce that however you will. And yeah, it's a pretty solid album. Again, if you can get past the vocals, or if the vocals are not a problem for you, then you will probably enjoy this album, because musically it's nice. It's just very good, and there's a lot of beautiful moments there. Okay, so if the last album was post-black metal or black gaze, basically everything I said about that last album, all of the references, like if you enjoy Alcest or Deaf Heaven or Olhava or Wolves in the Throne, like all of that stuff, and that is all true about this album as well, although it is a bit less of the black gaze, and it's a bit more melodic in that sense. This is an album that just goes harder. The album, by the way, before I get carried away, is Pritvorst. God damn it. The artist is Plakha. I'm pretty sure it's Placha or Placha. And the album is Pritvorstv. God damn it. I can hear it fine in my head. I just cannot get my mouth to say it. Притворство. There it is. Just took me a second. Okay. Yeah, it is like I said, this one goes harder. It's more focused. Vocals are more varied as well. And also the vocals are more common throughout the track as well. So it makes it a little bit less post-black metal. Also, the pronunciation of the band, I was correct the first time. Placha. I don't know what that means in Russian, but that's okay. What was I going to say about this? Yeah, so this is just black metal, but the other subgenres are present here. There's a little bit of spice, and they stirred it up, and they got something interesting from it, and I'm just going to play it so you can understand what I'm talking about. Like, I was really enjoying this album when it just had it playing. And I'm not gonna lie, the album artwork is very black metal in the sense of it's like very simple and kind of not cringe, but just like, I don't know, black metal album artwork is always just so formulaic that you're just like, come on guys. I mean, like a lot of metal album artwork is, but like, yeah. Anyway, so when I saw the album artwork, I was not expecting I was just like, okay, this is gonna be some whatever kind of black metal album. Let's just give it a listen. And I gave it a listen. Like, musically, it's kind of, it's like really solid. And it's a lot more melodic, right? Gnot with Вечность was more atmospheric, right? Again, black gaze and post-black metal. Whereas Притворстов by Плаха, see, I got the pronunciation right, I just had to get into it. Притворстов is, I mean, it's more metal. But there's more of a focus on melody over atmosphere. Not to say that the atmosphere isn't present, but definitely is. You can hear it. But it's just that kind of more. Like we have solos, right? No solos on the last album. So, and honestly, a lot of this kind of feels a little bit more like classic metal. I mean, obviously, it is still very much black metal. Right, that's the sound that the group is going for, but stuff like this feels a lot like kind of classic metal, or what a lot of people would consider to be that classic metal sound. Again, right, it's metal, you get the idea. I'm not gonna beat you over the head with it. So yeah, the album Притворстов, the group Плаха. I don't know. If you like it, you like it. I had a good time with it. I enjoyed it. It was actually one of those things where I was listening to so much music this last week and didn't have a lot to show for it. And so when I kind of stumbled onto this one, I was just pleasantly surprised. Like, oh, thank God, a breath of fresh air. Okay. The last album in the rock and metal category is also fantastic album artwork on this one. Like, this kicks ass. I love this album artwork. It's, even if the album wasn't good, this album artwork would still be good. Luckily, the album is good. The album is Край, тысячи озёр, or the land, or the we'll call it the land of 1,000 lakes, basically. It's not about Minnesota. It is about the northern part of Russia that is up by the Finnish border, Karelia. This group, and the group is MINUALA. I think that's how you pronounce it, MINUALA. or MINUALA. I don't know. It might be a Karelian word. I'm not entirely sure. I didn't look into it. That's outside my pay grade. This is the 6th album from the group out of Petrozavodsk, which I think is the first time we've had Petrozavodsk represented on the stream. So shout out to Petrozavodsk. This mixes folk metal with just kind of the regular heavier elements of heavier elements of metal, like doom and blackened hardcore. And let me kind of get this moved around here a little bit. Yeah, there's even elements of alt metal here. I'm typically not a fan of folk metal, mainly because folk metal feels like it's too undecided as to what it wants to be. A lot of times it either is too folk or it's not metal enough. And the notifications are a little bit annoying, but just give me a second here. So, what I was saying about folk metal before I got knocked off my rant. Yeah, folk metal oftentimes feels like it's trying too hard to be folk and not metal enough, or it's going too far in the metal direction and kind of loses the folk thread. That's not really the case here, because they don't just do the thing where they just mix the two sounds together. On this album, Край, тысячи, озёр, what they end up doing is they simply have sections that are more folky and they have sections that are more metally. They just kind of go back and forth between the two extremes. Now, there are parts of this album that have a more traditional folk metal sound. And I will say, by and large, this style is not my cup of tea, but it is really better than most of the stuff in the genre. And I think folk metal is becoming a more and more popular subgenre of metal, simply because it's got the sung female vocals. It feels a little bit more, I don't know, traditional or something like that. It has sometimes those different instrumentations which give it a lighter feel. But yeah, sonically this does feel like it comes out of the deep dark forests of Karelia, and it does feel like the band is trying to carve its own path through the genre, right? Or perhaps more accurately, between genres here. So I'm just going to jump into it. I've been yapping enough. So you're right, we had the folk sound in the beginning. Now we're in the metal section of the song. And now we're in that kind of traditional folk metal sound. But obviously, for a lot of people, this is their speed with metal, right? Because it's heavy, but the vocals are still pleasant to listen to. The actual folk music here. And I appreciate this, right? Like, because this is what I'm saying. They just straight up were like, what if we had folk music, but also metal music, and not the two of them necessarily together all of the time? Which I think is, again, I don't listen to a lot of folk music. Maybe this is way more pop than I understand. But just when I was younger, folk music was kind of starting to become a bigger and bigger thing even back then, and I just wasn't having it, so I'm gonna jump around again though. notice a pattern in terms of the vocals and stuff. Traditional folk metal sort of choruses, heavier verses, just some folk music type segments scattered throughout. This is the all metal type sound, right? Yeah, I mean, obviously the openers of the tracks too have a lot of that folkier sound as well. So, I don't really have a standout track because, again, for me personally, folk metal feels kind of all the same. But at the same time, I like these tracks, right? I don't know. Like, I don't want to crap all over this album because it doesn't deserve it. It's a good album. It's well made. And I've already mentioned folk metal is just not my thing. So, for some people, they're gonna get into this and there are gonna be standout tracks and they're gonna be able to, like, easily identify which track is which because of things. But even if you don't really tell the difference between them, they're all good for the most part. I would say that the third track with the guest artist Gnot on it is probably like my least favorite. But it's also the one that I think is, if I remember correctly, the most folky. So it also has its own merits. Right? You get the idea. You know what the sound is. It's folk metal. It's just kind of metal in general, but it's also got the folk elements, and then there's a little bit of the mixing, and it goes back and forth, and here and that, and this and that. So whatever. You get the idea. We haven't really heard this, I don't think, at all this year, that kind of sound. So it is something new. I will give it that, at least here. And yeah, it's still good. It's got great album artwork, so I gotta at least feature it at the very least just for that. So the album is Kraj, tысячи, озёр, and the group is MINUALA. MINUALA. What does that even mean? I gotta hold up. Now I'm kind of curious. Let me see if that actually means something. It's just a band name from the looks of it. I typed in MINUALA, and all that I got on a Google search is just the group. So anyway, moving along, we're going into pop and indie here. And we've got, we have 3 albums. The last one we're going to talk about is a special case. But first up, we have an EP by the group Mesch. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it. And the EP is called ГÖРЛЗ BAND. ГÖRLZ BAND. I still say band like an American, but ГÖRLZ BAND. Anyway, it's an indie rock girls band. Surprise, surprise, right? The music here is catchy. I'm just going to get that right. It's got that female singer, songwriter energy that has seen a major resurgence in popularity, at least in the indie stream, over the last few years. And, you know, obviously like Boy Genius and all of the women in that group and associated type acts, Phoebe Bridgers, and I can't remember who else. But if you know, you know, and if you don't, just look up Boy Genius, one word, and you'll see it. The music here is definitely more Russian, though the ladies have added a bit of an Iberian flair to the sound. It's heard mostly in the guitar lines, the rhythms. There are horns on some of the tracks. and just in general, a pretty upbeat atmosphere. So it's just like, it's a fun female indie rock type album. And you know what? I'm all for it. I mean, for an EP called ГÖРЛЗ BÄND, the album artwork is fine, but again, if you've been following the sort of the female singer-songwriter trend recently or kind of ever, it's a sound that's gonna be kind of familiar.
Ты вызываешь такс, останови меня, сам догадайся, как отчаялся, клеточка окна светит на стене, прощаемся. Это непростой год.
So, I mean, I think you get the idea. It's an EP.
Это непростой
Relatively short, although it's, 21 minutes long.
отказать во всем ради цели неясной наблюдаю.
It's got sort of the more upbeat songs. It has songs like this, which are more, what's the word? Not fragile, but like wounded to some degree, perhaps, or vulnerable. That's the word I was looking for. And then you have ones that are just like kind of, rockin' type of stuff. But realistically, this is indie rock. It's an indie rock group. Yeah, this is the first EP, if I remember correctly, too, from the ladies here. So, yeah, hopefully we'll get some more from it, because it's not even super common, I don't think, in the States or in the UK or wherever, the kind of female indie rock group. So here it kind of feels even more of a rarity. So yeah, the group is Mesch. And the EP is ГÖРЛЗ BÄND. BÄND. ГÖРЛЗ BÄND. Yeah, that's probably the best pronunciation, Russian pronunciation of girls band I'm going to get. So, okay. The last album I actually want to talk about is the album 4 by the group Несогласие. So I'm just going to call this indie rock because the approach to song choice here and genre is wholly independent. What starts out as a post-punk album on the first track quickly shifts over into like indie dance rock, and then they move to new wave with a modern twist, and then it goes to punk, and then it goes back to post-punk, but on speed. The shifting never ends. Each track just kind of bounces around and does its own thing, which is a little bit disorienting at first, but you kind of move beyond that fact because the songs are just good. Like, it's just a bunch of songs. They're all really good. It's all one group, but they were just like, what if we just played all of the genres, or not all of the genres, but like all of the rock genres that we like. So I'm just going to bounce around so you get an idea of the bouncing around. So, like, we start out with a more classic post-punk sound. And I honestly thought this was what I was getting into, and I was okay with it. This is like a nice version of that post-punk sound. But here we get into kind of like the a little bit new wave, a little bit dance rock, right? So already on the second track we've shifted a little bit, but then, you know, we jump down here and that 80s sound, you might say, is throughout regardless. And maybe that is the case. Maybe it's just like they're really heavily inspired by 80s music. That could very well be the case. But then you get into tracks like this, where you're like, wait a minute. Where did this come from? Because this is just like, this is punk, right? It's just punk rock. Sure, why not? And then on the next track, this is the post-punk on speed type of thing, right? And obviously there are... So, you can see, right? We have 8 tracks here, but there's no through line on all of, or on any of them. Aside from maybe the fact that it's just like, what if we made 80s music? And they were like, well, which type of 80s music? And the answer was, yes, right? 80s music. It's an eclectic mix of sounds, but the group pulls all of them off. All of the tracks are solid. None of them feel like they don't really know what they're doing. And yeah, it's an album that is all over the place, that refuses to sit still and kind of, I don't know, be one thing. But that's okay, because it's done well enough that it doesn't really matter. So the album is 4 Roman numerals, and the group is Nесогласие, or disagreement in English. So that is it. Now, this last album that we're going to talk about is not my top pick. It's an album I actually thought I wasn't going to talk about. I just want to be clear, too. There is no top pick this week. We are in now kind of just general music discussion time about what the situation is, and also why there were kind of so few albums this week. So this week we just talked about 8 different albums. I listened to probably at least that many albums, including this one. So we're on the 9th one. So this album and probably 7 others, or close to 7 others, that were all very similar in nature. And the nature was that they have really good production for the most part, but there are rap albums done by producers who should not be making rap albums. And the rapping was so bad on those albums, I just did not include them here. Woe 33 and Shiny Ruby, shout out to the 2 of you. But I'm going to talk about this one because Kai Angel is... I actually listened to an EP he released earlier this year and absolutely hated it. This is actually so much better than what he put out earlier today. And Kai Angel is... It's in the sort of underground youth rap scene. He's kind of a big deal, I guess. I don't know. Kai Angel and Mice 9, I think, is the other. 9 Mice. I don't know. It doesn't matter. This was still the biggest release of last week. And the reactions to this release were rightfully so, they were mixed. Some decried it, said it was absolute dog shit, which the first time I listened to it, I literally almost turned it off multiple times. But I decided to give it a second listen, and I'm glad I did. I still think it's kind of dog shit, but I realized that there is a very specific reason for that. And like I said, the production on this is quite good. Now, it is 17 tracks long. It's 17 tracks long. It's 40 minutes. This is something that we have seen multiple times in the past. Half of this should have been cut and just left. Not even like for B-sides, it should have just been tossed, right? Like half of this is just, even production-wise, not great. But, okay, so let's pretend for a second that Kai Angel had cut this down and left it at, what do we got? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tracks, right? Cut it down to 10 tracks. It would have been a very short 10 tracks because most of these songs are around the 2-minute mark, but still fine, whatever. That's pretty common in 2025. The main problem here, the reason that I almost shut this off multiple times when I was listening to it the first time, is the lyrics are so goddamn awful. They are horrible. And the thing is, normally I can tell people, it's like, well, if you don't understand Russian, it's not really a huge deal because you can just listen to the flow. And the Kai Angel has, I don't know if he lived in the States or he lives in the States, or I don't know what the deal is, but there is some connection there. He spends half of the album rapping in Russian or singing in Russian, and then the other half doing the exact same thing in English. And typically in a situation like that, you would assume that, well, one of the languages will be better, right? Like in English, it's probably not so great, but in Russian, it'll be good because maybe that's his native language, or maybe feels more comfortable in English. And in Russian, it's just kind of absolute, utter dog shit in both languages. Some of the dumbest, just most absolute asinine lyrics you could ever possibly imagine. Okay, so I had to go online to check and make sure I heard this correct, right? Because one of the lyrics, and it's an English one, so and this is one where he's talking about like he wants to be like all these chicks, he wants to be with this one. And one of the girls said, she said, "I can turn a gay girl straight. I know that." Did he not even bother to check what the fuck he was writing? She said, "I can turn a gay girl straight." This is supposed to be him wanting to, like, and it's just bad. It's just really, really bad. Now, musically, like I said, there's a lot of interesting stuff here. There's a lot of tracks. I wish he would just shut the fuck up. Like, I love this. I think this is great. Now, obviously, the whole album and the production and the beats are not all like this. But then he opens his mouth, right? Like, it's fine. I just want to jump around because musically, production-wise, on a lot of these tracks, it's good. It's catchy. I was having a good time musically. Lyrically, you want to just like ram a pencil into your eardrums. Like maybe you could just do an electronic album, right? Or just an album beats or something. Like, I love the music on a lot of the tracks, even the stuff that's a little bit more of the archive core sound.
Like sirens, you being vocal ups my finance. Yeah, she studied me in my science.
Yeah, but the lyrics absolutely are just god.
In your arms, it's a cool aesthetic. I'm a slave to the rhythm, to the rhythm of your hips, to the rhythm of your her. I think I wanna keep you move so nice to this. Get you made
So bad.
drunk girls, мы в BLCK sound system. Anyway, я просто хотел быть nice, я просто хотел.
So I just wanted to give a quick smattering, a sampling of the sounds on the album, because the sounds are good. Like I said, if it was just an electronic or an instrumental type album, or fucking like any other maybe rapper who had an ounce of skill in his body, then yeah. Zavet, I'll check that out in a second. The thing is, and let me talk real fast before I got that request there, and I'll check it out here. Aside from the fact that this feels bloated and it should be cut down, the problem that I ran into again and again this week is that it feels like there are a lot of artists who did not expect to blow up, that they just were operating in their own little corner of the internet, and then thanks to the algorithm or TikTok, they became large, and they were experienced with producing short form content, like for TikToks or YouTube shorts or whatever, right? Things that could be easily snipped down to like 20 or 30-second little sound snippets, slowed down or sped up respectively, right, depending on what was needed. And that turning some of these musical ideas into full-length songs is just too much for them. And I don't know, maybe it was just bad luck this week, but like I said, I had to wade through so much of this, and I don't know. And with the other artists too, right? Like I mentioned Shiny Ruby and Woe with 2 E's 33. Again, musically, a lot of good stuff going on there. But the albums, especially with Woe 33, just ungodly, way too long. And realistically, the thing is, they just aren't rappers. And that's fine. Like, there are bad rappers in English too and things like that. But I don't know. The big problem I had with this album is it was this back and forth between Russian and English. It was the lyrics are awful. The lyrics are goddamn awful. Like, go on genius.com, look up the lyrics to this Kai Angel album, and all right. Now I got a request here. So that's basically it. The other thing I wanted to say with regards to the I'm going to check out I got a request there in the chat. Listen to the album Zavet, Gotika, or Veins, which I've heard of, and I do know that Kai Angel was Zavet before he became Kai Angel. I'm not super deep in the lore, but I've been following the music scene here enough in the last year that I've read enough about Kai Angel through that. This week felt really dead, and I don't know what it was. Partly it's just because the release schedule at the start of September, I guess, was not very good. And it got me thinking a little bit too, because like I said, once we hit the first release weekend, the first Friday of a new month, I do not go back and listen to old music. But obviously, as I was looking through music blogs and music channels on Telegram this week, I kept finding releases from August, and I kept having this like, I should go back to August and listen to that. And if I had gone back to August and listened to stuff, I would have had some much better picks this week. Not to say that the albums I talked about this week were like bad by any mark. They were fine, right? They were like, there are definitely some ones that I think I'm going to enjoy more in the future. But like realistically, 8 albums. Last week I had 20 basically. And what is it? Quality over quantity, or it doesn't matter. I was thinking a little bit about moving forward. Obviously, we're coming up to the end of the year, but because of this arbitrary rule that I've imposed upon myself, where once we hit the first Friday release of a new month, I do not go back and listen to the previous month's releases. And obviously, there are a lot of releases in a month. There are things that I miss. And I feel like things are slipping between the cracks. So I haven't quite decided how I'm going to do it. It'll probably be at the end of the year, because I'm sure the releases will slow down a little bit. But at some point, I feel like I'm going to have to go back and attempt to look at things that I missed. I'll probably have to check, maybe some albums that made it on other people's end of the music lists or stuff like that. But yeah, this week got me thinking at least that maybe I should go back and go to the previous months. But I'm going to stick with my rule. So, all right. I had zavet. Let's check it out. So, yeah, we got Goetica there or Veins. Let me just open up albums. Wait, is Veins an EP or? Hold up. Nights Before Goetica. Interesting. All right. Not really sure what vein. So we'll just give Gothic a check out here, and we'll see what Kai Angel was doing a few years ago. Like, this definitely has a darker, actual edgier vibe. I mean, I already like this better than pretty much everything on Damage. I mean, it does have the Gothica vibe, so I do. It's got the, yeah. What is it, the horrorcore, whatever, the horror rap vibe. Yeah, like, just those two tracks right there, already, this is so much better than his new album, Damage, which I do want to highlight too. Kai Angel said that it took him like 2 years to finish the Damage album, so. Even the rapping is better. Is there something I'm... Hold up. I just want to see if there's veins somewhere. Never see your face again. I hope I never see your face again. Like, yeah. Alright, I don't know about the Kai, the zavet. I'm spelling it wrong. Zavet veins. Sborgum. No, I'm not. I don't know. So to Kenneth 1C69. Good stuff there. Yeah, I can't compare Gothica or Veins because I could only find Gothica. We can check. Oh, Jesus Christ, I'm an idiot. Yeah, of course, it's in... I don't know what I was... Okay, that's my bad. That is... I just was not using my brain. All right, let's give this a quick NKVD. Yeah, let's... So, here's what I'm going to say. Musically, and I realize I just am doing a very superficial reading of these two albums based on, like, brief snippets of various tracks. Goetica feels musically more engaging, right? Like, in terms of the actual production and the tracks. Goetica, just on that very superficial and very cursory first sampling, feels like a better album. Veins, or Gilles, feels like just an experimental rap album. And I can still get on board with that. Like, assuming that the track decides to play. Maybe it won't. Both of these are better than Damage, though. Right? 100%. Both of these albums by zavet, so old Kai Angel, both of these are 100% better than Damage. Here, I'm way more on board with the experimental aspect of the sounds. I'd have to probably actually sit down and listen to it, or maybe even pull up the lyrics sheet to see what's going on. But I would be willing to bet that lyrically there's also more going on here. And with Goetica, the music and the atmosphere that's built up around it feels like actually done well, right? And I don't know. It does feel like, again, if you look at Kai Angel versus zavet, if you just look at his whole persona now, it just is like emo edgelord bullshit. Whatever. I know there's a lot of people who are really into Kai Angel, and yeah, like, right, I have an album called Marilyn Manson, but then there's a track called Prada Party on it. It's like, I don't know. I'm not going to gatekeep because I honestly don't give a shit ultimately. But if you have an album called Marilyn Manson and then a track called Prada Party, like, it kind of feels like some poser shit, right? Like, you can't be... Well, I know in 2025 you can be all like, I love death metal, but also I'm super concerned about Gucci. It's just, I don't know. And I guess, you know, the blurring of the boundaries, but it kind of feels like it's, at least with his releases this year and a lot of his compatriots and peers in whatever the fuck the genre is, the subgenre is that they are working in, it kind of feels like it is specifically engineered for dumb teens. And, like, you know, that's a lot of the music industry, right? I'm not going to pretend that it isn't. I'm not going to pretend like some of the music I listened to when I was a teenager wasn't also... Like, go back and listen to Pretty Fly for a White Guy in 2025. I know The Offspring just had a live concert where they played it again, and it's just like, yeah, you don't... I mean, like, it's still a fun song, but it's only fun if you were there the first time around. And that's... I get that. That's how music is a lot of the time. Obviously, who knows? Maybe in 2045, there will be people who are ironically listening to Kai Angel. I just personally think that his music, and like I said, the music of his peers and compatriots in the music industry, is not going to age very well. There will be people who are dead set on it being a solid, cohesive musical statement, but I don't know. We'll see. Then again, Limp Bizkit is still around, and Deftones, but I feel like there is a little bit more musically going on there. Maybe it's personal bias. I don't know. I'm gonna wrap it up. I do. There are some, I think, relatively big releases coming out tomorrow, so I'm hoping that this next week will be a little bit more musically focused. I do enjoy kind of discussing just in general the state of the music industry as I see it here too, because obviously the Russian music industry, especially in 2025, since the start of the war, has become much more insulated from larger global trends, just simply because the larger global labels are not here anymore. Russian artists don't have access to it, and also they're not really able to attempt to break through in a lot of ways to foreign markets, which has never really been the case. But let's be real, in 2018, 2019, basically before the war, it did feel a little bit more like that might be a possibility, especially not a Russian group, but like the Belarusian group, Molchat Doma. They actually had some pretty serious success with critics, and I think even somewhat when it came to, earning money. But so yeah. Anyway, I don't have a top pick for the week. That's just kind of the state of it was. I think if I hadn't wanted to talk about Kai Angel's Damage album last, I probably would have finished with some of those metal albums. I did enjoy the metal albums a bit more than anything this week. But, take your pick. It was slim pickings this week, honestly. But that's okay. It happens. I already said I was going to wrap this up, so let's just actually do it here. I'll be back next Thursday, 10 p.m. Moscow time, to do this again, hopefully with a greater depth in terms of picks. But yeah, and then I'll be back on Sunday and Wednesday at 9 p.m. Moscow time to do some news review of what's been being discussed here. So anyway, y'all have a good evening or a good afternoon, whatever time of the day it is. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you when I see you. And until then, Paka paka. I grabbed the wrong mouse. Oops.